Our presentation is on normal adult aging and the contextual influences affecting speech and meaningful sound perception by Jennifer Adelot, Robert Leach, and Jennifer Crinion. Age-related hearing loss starts in the 4th decade of life and continues throughout the rest of life. It is characterized by high-frequency threshold shifts and a decline in speech perception scores. Cognitive aging, linguistic contextual cues, executive functioning, and inhibitory control are all factors that are thought to influence the severity of presbycusis. However, the first large-scale study to explore speech processing decline found that degree of audiometric loss is the main indicator of speech processing skills related to age-related hearing loss. It is also noted in the introduction that other studies have included things such as attentional control being a factor in the severity of age-related hearing loss, as well as text reception threshold being an indicator of speech reception threshold.
Next, we're going to talk about the research questions. A lot of the research questions and hypotheses were from the pilot study. The first question was, does aging affect individuals' abilities to recognize speech in different environments and influence how individuals identify environmental sounds? And does contextual information for speech and non-speech rely on top-down information? There were 4 main hypotheses. One being older adults rely more on semantic context when communicating. 2, older individuals will have more interference from incongruent context. 3, noisier environments or competing speech reduce older adults' ability to recognize the context of speech and environmental sounds more than younger adults. So this would mean noisier environments, more background noise, multiple people talking at the same time. 4, context effects in speech and non-speech will correlate, or there'll be a shared semantic processing.
There were 34 native British English speakers who participated in this study. 21 were aged 18 to 40, 11 were aged 50 to 70, and 2 were above the age of 70. They all had normal hearing or mild hearing loss with no neurological issues. The first task, which was the sentence word priming task, consisted of a sentence that ended with a target, and there were 54 target words in total. Targets could be congruent, meaning it fit the sentence, neutral, or incongruent. Some sentences were played isolated while others had background talk. They were all recorded in an Industrial Acoustics Model 403 soundproof chamber. The participants were instructed to press a green button if they heard a real English word or a red button if they heard a non-word. Similar to the sentence word priming task, during the naturalistic auditory scene analysis, the participants listened to background noise and had to identify congruent and incongruent target sounds. The targets may have appeared later or earlier relative to the onset of the background noise. The participants pressed a button when they heard the target sound.
Some of the main findings were speech recognition. Older adults showed more substantial context benefits in quiet environments, but these benefits did not help when competing speech was present. So if they had to multitask, if they had to listen to multiple people speaking at the same time, if they were in louder environments. Environmental sound recognition. Younger adults showed more substantial contextual effects compared to older adults. Older adults had a harder time building meaningful interpretations of incongruent sounds. Incongruent sound is when a sound doesn't really make sense in a certain setting. For example, if you're at the grocery store and then you hear a random dog barking or hear a siren go off. For older adults, performance on speech and non-speech contextual tasks have a correlation, suggesting that there was a shared top-down semantic system.
Because older adults' use of context effects carried over from one task to another, speech and sound processing can be said to share top-down processing mechanisms. Due to younger adults utilizing contextual effects more, it can be noted and recalled from earlier that linguistic context cues play a part in older adults' processing of speech and sounds. Facilitating better context clues would be beneficial for the speech processing of older adults. The sound environment can make a big difference in speech processing for older adults as well. A quiet environment can make for more productive speech processing, while competing speech can cause a decline in speech processing. While speaking to older adults, it is important to foster an environment that is productive to their speech processing. They are capable of knowing what you are saying, however, outside factors can negatively impact their conversational experiences.
Did the results support the hypotheses? Yes, most of these findings were supported by the author's initial hypotheses. Older adults rely more on context to understand speech in quieter environments. Listening becomes much harder when competing speech is present, reducing their ability to pick up on context. There is a significant correlation between speech and non-speech tasks, suggesting a shared top-down semantic system. One thing I will point out is researchers did not find a big difference between older and younger adults when dealing with incongruent context due to reduced inhibitory control. However, there was still a microscopic difference. Real-world implications. 1. Speech understanding becomes harder in noisier environments, making it harder to follow a conversation, and those context cues to disappear, especially in restaurants, crowded rooms, or when multiple people are talking all at once. Environmental sounds and perception can be reduced. Older individuals might have a harder time identifying alarms, sirens, traffic sounds. Rehabilitation strategies include strengthening of semantic processing, might help individuals in pre-reading speech and environmental sounds, but again, it depends on each person individually. I put technologies here for like hearing aids. They can help, but as we all know, it depends on each individual separately. This is not a cure. Counseling and training will be needed as well. Overall, older adults rely on top-down contexts in quieter environments, but this is not as effective in noisy or real-world conditions. This can affect communication, listening, and safety. Innovations in both auditory and cognitive support can be beneficial.